Today we're welcoming Philip Gould, Lafayette photographer and author of the new book, Louisiana from the Sky. This is Philip's 20th photography book.
It's true.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
And I know you've been, taking photos of Louisiana since the 70s. So how is this book different? How is this approach different?
That's a good question. I've been taking photographs since the 70s. When I first came here in '74, working for the Daily Iberian, straight out of college. And just for the record, it was the best first newspaper job one could hope for.
Wow.
It was just amazing. I got to do whatever I wanted. No news really in this town, so the newspaper was looking for other things. And so go beat the bushes. And that's kind of how I did it, and I learned to see opportunities where apparently, none may have been obvious.
I grew up in New Iberia, so I know what you're referring to.
It's there, Well, but if you think about it, there's plenty to shoot.
It's a beautiful place.
To get to your point, well, first of all, the orientation for most of my work up till this book has been from the ground. It has been looking straight at whatever the subject is. Mm-hmm. The previous book I did on bridges across the Mississippi, I used a drone on many occasions just to get, you need the drone for the perspective looking at the bridges. And then I just transferred it. There's a photograph in the book a couple of days before Christmas Eve where you have this wooden alligator, huge 30-foot alligator. Mm-hmm. All these people are gathered around it, and you see the tops of their heads in long shadows that they're casting. And that was the idea. That was the picture that triggered the idea. That if this strange, surreal scene just pops right up, I'll bet you others will too.
Okay, so you started with the photo came first, and then the idea for the book.
The photo triggered the idea, absolutely. And so at that point, I just kept just kept my eyes peeled, kept thinking about what could make a good photograph. There were a ton of obvious subjects that needed to be covered. The French Quarter, just the Mississippi River, the prairies. And also just the landmarks, the cities that people built in this very somewhat flat terrain. And I think those have a lot of interest as well. I photographed New Iberia, Abbeville. I photographed Minden, Louisiana. I photographed Shreveport. I photographed in Alexandria, Cane River. Just different places where the hand of man was utilized to create, the architecture for a culture. Mm-hmm, so that was great. I enjoyed that. And then from there we go into looking at some of the situations with the coastal erosion business. And so...
Yeah, it's just it's a different perspective. And I liked how you mentioned at the beginning of the book about how, being from California, you were kind of used to the different topography. And it's so flat here, we don't often see the drama in that way.
I came to Louisiana at the age of 22 from California, geographically spoiled. Every time I turn around, there's an amazing view of the Pacific Ocean or the bay or well, you get to Louisiana and it's flat. Flatter than this table. Mm-hmm. And so finally I realized that the verticality came from standing under live oaks and that you get that overhead canopy and all that kind of thing, which helped, just gave the illusion that it was not just flat.
Yes, but now having this drone and aerial photography, you can see that.
Tripod in the sky.
Yes.
And so... But I've always said that you can't see Louisiana from the ground. Mm-hmm. You can see that building, you can see that tree, you can see that swamp, but to see the state, you really have to get up high and look out over it. And so that's how the drone came in so wonderfully handy. I could just put the drone up and capture whatever I wanted. I photographed a lot of situations where the only other way to do it for area would be a helicopter, and that would make such a racket that it just would spoil the calm of the scene. So I love it. I mean, it's just a wonderful tool, a tripod in the sky.
Yeah, they're truly stunning, and even
Thank
places for those of us who are so familiar, who grew up here. Even seeing it in this way, you get a completely different idea of this area.
The state, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there is drama in the landscape if you are above it. Sometimes there's drama otherwise, but and then Elmore Morgan, famous artist and professor here, always said that the key element to remember in landscapes is that you got to include the sky.
Yes.
The sky gives the drama to the landscape in many situations.
He captured some beautiful sky, and you do.
Yeah, for example, on the cover,
yes.
You can see this is beautiful. It's a cloud just happened to be there, and we have a sun rising through it, and how can you beat that? And there's several other examples too.
Yes.
But just to get a sense of the landscape and how clouds are very much part of it, an important part.
Yes. And I know there are a lot of beautiful landscapes in here, but you also have portrait photography. I mean, you have people in a lot of the festivals and the small town festivals. So how is that different than when you were just kind of focusing on the drama of the landscape versus capturing these events and the culture?
Well, the events I wanted to be somewhat representative of the broader culture. You can't be encyclopedic in a situation like that, but you can touch upon things. And sometimes you get a nice little jewel. I was up in Gippsland, the Bonnie and Clyde Assassination Festival.
I didn't even know that was something that occurred.
And yeah, I mean, it's a festival, and it's a small town, and there's a museum and all this, and so they're doing a reenactment of the assassination out at the site where it happened, and so everyone's lined up along the road and all this, and the cars, as scripted, the cars come up. And the sheriff's car sort of forces the other one to go in a ditch, and next thing you know, all kinds of people come out of the trees and all that. Blah, 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 blah. And the key there, I said, well, that doesn't look all that interesting, but at some point they open the door and you can see these two actors basically looking as dead as possible, and their foot is hanging out, and they're this, and then people are just gathering around like a morbid. Almost like
but it's all acting.
It is all acting. Well, I think the interest of the people is very. Come on.
and I imagine. Oh yeah, there you go. Wow. You can so see, what we're seeing, they're kind of crowded around this car.
To look at a bunch of actors who are pretending they're dead.
Wow. Wow.
It's okay. Yeah. Whatever. I'll take it.
I mean, but you really can capture it, and I imagine when you're on the ground shooting in a crowd of people, you're kind of you become part of the story in a way where here you can kind of be a little.
Yeah. For example, this is a photograph of 4th of July in Erath. I'm shooting from a drone. I'm probably 50 feet in the air with a telephoto or something, maybe normal lens. And I just wanted to create a sense of the whole scene and then just still have the focus on the point of the water slamming against these firemen. So anyway, I hope that helps with the question.
No, it does. It does. And I feel like even if you've attended one of these events, even just kind of seeing it in this way, it takes a different perspective. So.
Right. It's interesting. My wife often says that when we go traveling, I go to see it all and to experience it. You go to see it and photograph it. And, I always worry that you're not really fully experiencing it. I said, believe me, when you are photographing it, you're looking at it that much more intently.
You're noticing everything.
And you have a document of what you saw.
Yes.
So that, and so I think that approach is better for long-term memories and that kind of thing.
So this book has more than 200 images that range in subject matter, but you wrote that there is a common thread that kind of connects all of them. Can you share a little about that?
Well, I think the common thread is partly the question of altitude, that we're looking above it for the most part and down. And truth and honesty department, there are a few pictures that are taken from the ground. I'll be the first to admit it, but they're key to the story. And and I think the other thread is that this is a portrait of the state. It is affirmative, yet but clear-eyed. We are an amazing place. If anyone who has come here, often comes back, and sooner or later they might actually move here. And so it's an amazing place, and it has problems, and but we have to be clear-eyed about it. And I photograph a little bit of what they're doing to help alleviate the problems. Building flood control gates and this kind of thing, and just trying to prevent tidal surges. Even on the cover, you have these rock formations that are doing exactly that.
So it's a love letter, but it's also almost a call to action in a way.
Point taken. Yeah, a love letter with a velvet glove, reading them the riot act. Time to get going here.
With this story, you said you hope that people take away something from this. What do you hope that they will take away from seeing these images, particularly the ones you were speaking of earlier, of kind of the effects of the coastal erosion?
Yeah, coastal erosion and everything. Well, I hope that the book gives readers to develop a deeper bond to Louisiana. I think that there is a lot here for people to really enjoy. I know so many people who move here and make their lives here, and why? Well, there's a lot of reasons. A lot of them are cultural. A lot of them deal with community. Lafayette has an amazing community. We all seem to know each other, and we all seem to support each other in large measure. And other towns, maybe not. It's a tricky thing. So I'm sorry.
No. That was exactly it. And I was also just curious, as someone who was not from here and has been here for so long and really dedicated your life's work to this place. What keeps you staying here and continuing to come up with new ideas and creative work?
And I think the key is to that I realized a good long time ago, that Louisiana is an incredibly generous subject. There is always something, and you think you may have photographed everything, and then bam, something pops up. Wow, and especially when you're driving around, I was surprised so many times by what I saw. And there's a picture of this float. It's a camp that's on a barge, and the tent. It's a tent that's in the shape of an alligator snapping turtle, and you got the head that they carved up, and you can see all the swamp in the background, and you just know what's in the swamp. And this is a camp that this guy built for his grandchildren and all that. So I just, situations like I would never have said, don't forget to go up there, just get the shot when you see it. And
so it's never boring.
Seldom.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes the long drives, but that's all right.
Yes. And so I know, just that kind of a little closer to home, this is the podcast of La Louisiane magazine, and I know you've photographed pictures for the magazine and done a lot of photography here on this campus. What do you take away from that experience?
That's a good question. I had an assignment when President Audubon was retiring to go photograph all the buildings that were built under his tenure, leadership, and his administration, and it was a significant number. And so that I felt I was more connected to the school, just being able to look at it more intently. I think since then the school has become beautiful. The spaces are created. The student union was already there, I think. The Cypress Lake. All these spots are just aesthetically pleasing. And so, it's a beautiful campus, and it's very clear to that.
And then just kind of in closing,
sure.
How do you feel kind of thinking about comparing this type of aerial photography to the type of photography you do? Is it something that, you've done this book and now you've done it, or do you see yourself kind of incorporating that into your practice more?
I consider the drone part of my toolkit. It is not the only part. And I still have cameras, the whole business, and I go around photographing. And if I need to get a drone up, it'll be very clear, and so I'll just do it. And I don't worry about what is going to come of the photograph, that kind of thing. I just if it needs to be photographed, I will photograph it from the ground, from the sky, what have you. And again, Louisiana is a very generous state. It is always giving. So
we'll look forward to whatever's next. But for now, people can find this book at UL Press at the Roy House or online, and it's
also Cavalier Books downtown.
Cavalier Books downtown.
Yeah. You can go to Amazon. I mean, you can go get it in a number of places. But I think it's worthwhile.
It is. It's stunning, and like we said, it tells a story that hasn't really been told before in this way. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah. You're welcome. Anything else before we go?
I want to thank everyone who buys the book. That kind of thing. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, it's been such a pleasure to get to speak with you. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening to this conversation with La Louisiane, the official magazine of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette since 1989.